So let's jump right in. You both saw A New Hope twice in the theaters. Is that right?
That's my recollection. It
I
was
will
what?
go with her recollection.
Yeah, we're going
Whatever.
to have to share and just be generous with our recollections
Yep,
because it was what, 45, 50, almost 50 years ago?
yep.
Getting there. Well,
Yeah.
the reason I ask though is that why did you go the second time? Was that common to see a movie twice, or was that something special and something new?
Since
I
I'm the
think,
one remembering, maybe I should go first,
Go
David.
yep,
for it.
sure.
Um, I mean, we were in graduate school. I remember waiting in line like forever and being stunned by, the crowds around the theater. And I think we were both just blown away. And I think we went on I seem to remember it was during the day, but who knows? Who knows?
Right.
Um, and it was just so wonderful. I wanted to see it again. Now, I'm assuming I went with Dad, but I, I don't know. And I don't think I'd ever done that before. And I don't know that I've really done it since.
What
That's why
about
it
for the
kind of
second
stuck
and
out.
third movies? Did you have a similar experience for those, or had it kind of worn off a little bit?
The second, I don't have a strong memory about. The third, we were in New York City,
Yeah.
and I distinctly remember, and I actually went and looked it up. We saw it at the Ziegfeld Theater at 54th and 6th Avenue, or Avenue of the Americas. And it was a big deal. It was a big line. I think we went to a late afternoon show, hoping that the
Yeah.
crowd wouldn't be so bad, but I still remember it being jammed.
Yeah. I remember going to the second one. And I do remember the third one very vividly. And we would go to the Ziegfeld. We lived at 55th between 8th and 9th, and the Ziegfeld was 54th and 6th. So we were close to everything.
Yeah.
And but I remember this going to the second one where I don't remember, but being so disappointed because it was the very first time I'd seen a movie that was obviously setting up for the next movie.
Hmm.
With a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
kind of literally, he's hanging off of the
I
spire at the
know.
bottom of. Was that, I mean, I actually had never thought about that before. Was that not a common thing for movies and series to end on I mean, that happens all the time now with TV shows and movies where there's a
Yeah.
cliffhanger and it's you got to watch the next one. Was that not really a thing that happened often?
I don't remember it in movies per se. Um,
TV
there weren't
shows,
that,
sure.
I mean, other than the James Bond movies, there weren't that many that, spawned sequels that kept rolling out. I think Star Wars sort of started that phenomena, I think.
Do you remember if we were aware that there were going to, yeah, because it started with four,
Yeah.
duh.
Yeah.
And it's
So,
like, well, what's that about?
Right.
And,
did you ever
and
wonder about one, two, and three? What,
Oh,
where are they?
yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Well, speaking of one, two, and three, how did that experience compare? I mean, episode one came out in 99, and then in 97, they re-released everything and played them for the 20-year anniversary of A New Hope. And I remember you took us to the movie theaters, and that changed my life seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah.
But seeing the prequels, what was that experience like for you? Were you disappointed? Did it retain that magic that you had for the first ones?
Not in the same way. Um, I think the newness had worn off, and you were always at that point comparing.
Yeah,
Um, and I think the new characters, we were used to some of the old characters in the first three, if you will, and here we're meeting new people, and a new timeline. So it didn't overwhelm me as much.
yeah. I didn't care for him. I don't think I've seen him since.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
I don't have them on my video shelf of favorite things to watch on a rainy day.
Your comfort food
My
series?
comfort food series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, and you may not be wanting to go there yet, although 1, 2, and 3 are right there.
You mean 4, 5, and 6?
No, 1, 2, and 3. No, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, and 9. What?
Oh, the
The latest
sequels,
one. The
the Disney
sequels.
ones.
Yeah. The latest
So
ones.
that's interesting. So those had magic for you, and the prequels just did not capture you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think that was? Was it just more compelling characters, or what was it that grabbed
Well, I
you?
love the characters. I love the references to the old. I loved seeing the original um, actors recreating and developing, having developed character and interim stories about themselves, and it was shamelessly derivative of A New Hope. And I went, oh yeah,
But that's
oh
kind of great.
yeah,
Yeah. That was my
and
favorite part about it.
yeah, and shocking when Han Solo is killed. I mean, I started to cry. It was like,
He was killed.
no, no,
Oh my
no.
God! Spoiler
Did
alert!
I? Uh-oh,
I
did
know.
I spoil
I'll
it
have to
for you,
do a
David?
spoiler warning at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Uh,
and I
well,
loved Ray.
yeah, I'm actually I'm a Ray apologist. I have a lot of friends who are really not a fan, but I know that'll probably be a topic for another episode. But Dad, specifically a question for you about Phantom Menace. I feel like there must have been something that resonated with you because you went out and bought every single Phantom Menace Lego set created. And I looked it up because I went, there's no way. But you did. The Gungan, the Gungan ship that takes them through the planet core, the Trade Federation battle droid tank
Right.
thing. I mean, they're all in my house. Some of them I have all the pods for the pod racing, every single one. But you didn't do that for episodes 2 and 3, so I'm wondering what was it about Phantom Menace that inspired you to go out and get all the Legos?
Well, I did a little research. They were introduced at the time that Phantom Menace was released in '99, and once I got a couple, it was like
A
I
gateway
wanted to get the
drug.
rest of them, and it was a way also to. It was something that you guys seem to enjoy, so it was something. It was a shared activity. But I love Legos, and there's a certain amount of collector finisher completer in me, you know. So once I had one, I wanted to get the rest of them. I'm thankful I didn't get caught up in the more expensive ones, otherwise I'd be broke. So
Well, and that I guess that explains why you didn't do that for the other two prequels.
yeah,
Because you knew if you had one, well, what's the point of having one when you have to have all of them,
right. Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
Oh, that's pretty funny.
yeah.
When you saw the first ones in the theaters, did it ever cross your mind that maybe it would just be a fad, or did you have a sense that maybe something momentous was happening? And the reason I ask is that I would imagine it would be surprising that you have grandkids now that are excited about TV shows coming out week to week based on this thing
Right.
that came out, close to 50 years ago.
I don't think at the time of the first of New Hope, that I thought it would spin out 50 years. That's for sure.
Mm.
But I think by the time they got to the second round, you realized this thing had its own momentum, and had it had its own fan base that was going to sustain it along the way. So I think at that point I got a sense for it. Plus, just on the business side, I began to understand just what a huge financial engine the whole series was, in a whole in a number of different ways. So
I
by
think
well,
when, oh, go ahead, David.
no,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't think at the time I was aware of, the sense that, but I think when Disney bought it and there was going to be Star Wars in the parks.
Mhm.
And I think some of the people, the very, very talented people who have picked up the franchise
Mhm.
and created the spin-offs. And I wish I could read John LaFavor. Is he the, or John Favreau?
Favreau.
Favreau, yes.
Yeah.
Favreau, sorry. Um, Thinking of a ballet dancer. Sorry. Uh, I mean, and the storytelling and taking, it's almost like the ultimate of fan fiction, where they take a little kernel or a character like um Boba Fett and make this whole backstory about him. And I mean, I think that no one realized it was going to be such a juggernaut of storytelling
Mhm.
and the way it's been told. And the Star Wars stuff at Disneyland, I mean, Anna, you and I just went, and
Yeah, you just went for the
it
first time.
the Star Wars area, I don't know, it's not Star Wars land, I don't know what they call it,
Galaxy's
but
Edge.
Galaxy's Edge, it's phenomenal. You feel like you're there. And that was something, having worked at Disney in animation, the care with which they do things is so specific. And so every detail, every entryway is kind of complete. And you see R2D2 rolling down the street, and you see, you know, it's just wonderful, really wonderful.
Dad, have you been to Galaxy's Edge yet or no?
Nope, still
It's
to
some,
do. Yeah, no, I want to, and I'd love to do it with the grandchild so that I get that kind of first time experience. But so you know that's to come. Um,
well, you got a couple of those, so that's good.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
As Faith, as you were talking, I realized that a big part of my enjoying the newer work, the fill in, Mandalorian and
Mm,
Fett and all that, is really Anna, your interest and your enthusiasm for it, because that's brought me into it, back into the newer work. Um, and Faith, like you, I've enjoyed the filling in of the storylines and the taking a small character and spinning out the whole backstory.
mhm.
I have found that fascinating, and you have to admire the creativity and the you know and the productions of those too.
Mhm.
Have you seen all the live action shows? You have, haven't you, at this point?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
You've seen
yeah,
Ahsoka?
yes,
Because I remember, I think a couple of times ago I saw you. I showed you one of the episodes of Clone Wars.
right,
That's
right,
one of the four arguably best episodes, and it just didn't seem to get you. And it seems like something in the animation versus live action just doesn't connect for you.
right. Well, I don't typically look to animation for fantasy adventure, the kind of the Star Wars genre, if you will. So it's part of it's probably just habit in terms of what catches my attention that way. Yeah.
Sure.
But I've
Well, you
still
know,
got them on my
I'm
list. I
yeah,
still
I'm
have
gonna
three to
have you
watch.
watch the three rest of them.
Yes.
Because I would challenge you to get through the last episode and not at least get Misty.
Okay.
Um,
That'll be a good test if we can do that.
yes. Uh, yes. Yeah,
The
that's all I'll
gauntlet, the
say.
gauntlet is thrown.
I mean, it's not like I'm spoiling anything. You know what happens, but yeah, I won't say anything else. Um,
And I don't know why any of the live action TV ones have really not resonated with me.
but you
Hmm.
watched The Mandalorian in the beginning. I mean, you
I
watched
did,
it every week,
I
and then
did,
you stopped.
I did. And I stopped in the middle of the second season. I mean, I don't know what to say. You
It's
weren't there
okay.
with
There's
me.
no. There's no wrong answer. If it didn't, if it didn't capture you, it didn't capture you.
Mm-mm,
Mhm.
mm-mm. But
Yeah.
I will pull out, I will pull out, I don't, the most recent three
Hmm.
and watch them. I mean, I'm surprised they still work.
Do you watch those more than the original three?
I sometimes I'll do like a marathon
Hmm.
if I'm sewing or doing some sort of craft thing. I don't know what it is about a rainy day. But I'll do a rainy day Star Wars day and
Sure.
something about
So the
that
reason I
opening
brought up,
chord.
yeah, I know. The reason I brought up those first three again is, I mean, the reason I wanted to talk to you about this all in the first place was the Friday night Star Wars nights that we had,
Mhm.
that started when I was maybe 5 or 6. Um, and I know, Dad, we talked about it. You don't have as many strong recollections, but do either of you remember what prompted you to think, let's watch one of 3 movies every single week for over 5 years?
I
Um,
do have some recollections. Um, Tommy as a baby would not sleep through the night. He had a hard time. And I would go upstairs and get him settled. And by that time, you were awake and unhappy. And what we wound up doing is put a little mat on the floor so that if you woke up, you were old enough in the middle of the night, you could just come in and put yourself to sleep. And then when Tommy was old enough to crawl out of his crib and walk down the stairs, he did the same. So there were times when we'd set him up every night. Sometimes you were there, sometimes you weren't there. And Friday night was like, I guess, the equivalent of family date night. We had slumber party night. And you got to start in our room on the floor. And I think that then said, okay, we can watch a movie. And I guess the TV was in the living room at that point.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
And
right.
we had some VHS. I mean, it was VHS then. And I know we had Star Wars. And I think we watched it once. And every other week was your turn to pick. Then Tommy would pick, then your turn to pick. And I think we picked Star Wars once. And then the next kid picked the next one. And then it became like this crazy habit. And it was fun. We'd have popcorn and get in our pajamas and watch Star Wars until you
Right.
fell asleep.
That's so wild because we really, I mean, I mathed it out. And if you account for maybe certain Friday nights we had guests for dinner or we were on vacation, so, cut a couple Friday nights out of the year, we still, if we were watching them evenly, we watched each one about 72 times. Um, but I mean, I'm sure like we were kids, so one of them, Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks, might have gotten a little extra play if we were picking, but
Right.
I mean, and it just none of us got bored. I mean, I might have
Uh-uh.
eventually when I was 11 or 12 thinking like, oh, this isn't cool anymore, but I mean, look at me now, but
Do you think we really did it that long?
we did.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I think
You
until
turned
I
out
got old
okay.
enough to get into TGIF and Boy Meets World and all of that, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Well,
for years and years, the you guys were only allowed to watch 2 channels.
that's
Hmm.
right.
Channel 3, which was the DV, that being the VHS channel. So that's how we curated your content then. We only had VHSs that we were okay with you watching. And
Hmm.
then the other thing was Channel 28, which was,
The
Sesame
PBS channel.
Street. Yeah, PBS. So that was the other part of it. Friday night, we wouldn't have turned on network TV. It would have been something that we were comfortable with. So
Yeah.
Uh, I do remember that. I mean, when you allowed us to watch The Simpsons on Fox, which isn't also not a cable channel, it was just like, oh my gosh,
New world.
this
yeah,
huge new world. I know. So I gotta ask though, do your respective significant others share in your fandom on any level? Or is this kind of, I know, Mom, you don't really watch any of the new TV shows anymore, but Dad, does Peggy watch any of the shows with you, or is she just like you're on your own?
I'm on my own. She
Okay.
she hasn't gotten. I mean, she saw the original three, um, but it has not been a fan, in a sustained way, and I've not been able to try to loop her in.
Just not her thing.
So yeah. So when she's out of town, I tend to binge.
Now, Billy is supportive in my habit.
Does he join in your habit or not so much?
You know what? It's interesting. Sometimes if it's on one of the movie channels, he'll leave it on and sort of beckon me into the other room. And because my office where I watch things, I have a little TV, and it's certainly not the same as watching on a big TV.
If you want to switch, you can. I got it working.
Okay.
Oh, I hear
We don't
someone in
need
the
to.
background.
We don't need to switch now. Billy's got his computer working, but I think we're
No, I
okay.
think we're kind of getting towards the end.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, thank you.
but no, your phone sounds fine on your phone actually.
Okay.
No.
And
Yeah,
you
it ended
think
up
I should
working
get
out.
a new iPhone?
I do. I do. Maybe one that it has double digits. I think you have a 7 or a
I
6 or
do.
something.
I have a 7.
Yeah, at least get an 11 or
Anyway,
I know. What is so before we do wrap up, there's one key question that I want to ask
can I
both of you.
can I ask you a question,
Of
Anna?
course, yes, you can
Do
ask
you
me.
watch any of the old movies?
I do.
Do
We
you?
actually watched A New Hope 2 weeks ago with the kids. Um, and Sage said, I don't want to watch this. And then immediately was just sitting on the couch, like engrossed with the droids and was very interested in the Jawas on Tatooine. I had lots of questions. And then the next day, so Saturday, we watched Empire. And he got a little scared
I do.
during
I can
the
understand that.
yeah, so we ended up actually turning it off. We didn't finish it.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, he's seen it before, but I don't think he remembers it because he's not even 7.
Yeah.
But we do watch the originals. I still think they're my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and Rogue One. Rogue One has a special place in my heart.
Well, and you turned me on to that recently when we were on the airplane. Anna and I were sitting next to each other, and we pressed play at exactly the same time because I hadn't seen Rogue One,
I
and
Mhm.
was
I
shocked.
loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. It's also the same way I was introduced to John Wick, but that's another podcast.
Yeah, just
Yes, yes,
another.
right.
Yes. I mean, I know my mom. You've got a soft spot for violent action adventure movies.
Whatever.
I think I got you into Reacher too.
Well, I got into Reacher because my current spouse cut a movie, one of the Tom Cruise movies, as an editor, and so I started reading the books, and I loved the books. But again, that's
Yeah.
senior citizens for Jack Reacher podcast.
There, you know what? There's a niche. I'm sure there's an audience for that.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any other questions
No.
before I get to my final burning question?
Okay.
Well, it's a two-parter. Which Star Wars character do you identify with most and why?
Wow.
Or who is your favorite if that's too tricky?
Okay.
Because you can just have a favorite.
I gave this a lot of thought, Anna, because you prepped us with some questions,
I
and
did.
all of the characters are pretty broadly drawn. There are good ones, there are evil ones, there are smart ones, there are silly ones.
Hmm.
There are leaders, and there are little doses of different ones. I like to think that I have the strength of someone like Ray, or Princess Leia. We strive to be a woman warrior. I think I can be a little prissy like C-3PO. Little, I
He is
see
very
little,
prissy.
he is very prissy. Um, but he's willing. And then R2-D2 is just fiercely loyal. I mean, that's a wonderful
He's a brave little
quality.
guy.
He's a brave little guy.
Hmm.
And you just don't know if those qualities, if you had to really call on them in a big way, if you'd find them. But I thought Dad, because of his size, would either be Darth Vader or a Wookiee, but that's
There's a lot of
purely
there's a lot of road to walk between Darth Vader and Chewbacca.
no,
Yes,
no,
right.
not suggesting anything.
I mean, the height does make sense for either one of those, or maybe one of the Kaminoans, one of the cloning with the super long necks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I could, yeah, I have to admit, I didn't get all the way down the list of questions, so this
that's
one is a
okay.
surprise to me.
I kept
You can
talking,
also just
so
say
you
who's
could
your
form your
favorite.
opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was
Well,
stalling for time.
I mean, there are moments when I'm in a crowd moving someplace where using my size like Darth Vader probably fits, more than like Chewbacca. Um, I was trying to, I really enjoyed your answer, Faith, that there are aspects of many of them that, I would hope I exhibit. I don't know that I could pick just one. I think I'd like to, there's attributes of many of
That's
them.
fair.
Yeah, yeah,
That's an acceptable.
right.
What are two like aspects that you like a lot or are
Well,
fond of?
again, I'm gonna follow on what's already been said, but the bravery and the loyalty of R2-D2. Um, there's something. I mean, I think it wouldn't be unusual to want to be Han, but on the other hand, he
You're
exhibits.
not grumpy enough.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that's
You
the
might
case.
project that sometimes, but it's just not who you are. He's so curmudgeonly. Um, but I can see you cutting a dashing Han figure, definitely.
No, it's more the yeah, it's more um, gosh, I can't even think of the right word to describe that. The devil may care, charge into it attitude, But on the other hand, when the going got tough, he bailed. So in at least
He
one
came
case,
back.
he
But he
did.
came
He
back.
did.
He did.
It
He
just took
saw
him a
the
long
error of
time.
his ways.
Yes. Yeah.
What
He
about
really,
you,
And
yeah.
Hannah?
he finishes well. So
What
Oh
about me?
my.
Well, I had a second part to that question that so I'm going to put you both on the spot. What Star Wars character reminds you most of me? Or do I remind you like if you had to answer that question for me? And I know that's not a question that many guests will be able to answer because they don't know me as well as you do.
right.
Uh, but I was very interested to see what your answer would be to that.
Hmm. Who's in the latest one? I'm not great with character names, so in the latest one with the two female characters, one's a Jedi, the other is her Padawan,
Oh, Ahsoka, Sabine and Ahsoka.
Sabine.
That is awesome.
Now
That
you're
would
gonna have to tell me why, because I don't know that character.
She is a Mandalorian of a very high pedigree, comes from a clan going back hundreds and hundreds of years, and she was raised to be a warrior, and comes from a warrior family and wears her family armor that was reforged. Lots of stories. But she joined a group of rebels after she dropped out. Well, not dropped out. She escaped from the Imperial Academy, and joined a group of rebels. And then when her friend was went missing, essentially like disappeared, she joined up with Ahsoka, who is a Jedi, to find him. And at some point during their journey, we haven't really seen, maybe in comics, but I haven't really seen, she decides to become her Jedi Padawan. And then Ahsoka bails on her. And the show
Oh.
kind of picks up where they realize maybe they can go find their friends, so they reunite. So Sabine has a lot of the qualities of a Jedi, but then in one fight scene, she's fighting with the lightsaber. Someone pushes the lightsaber away from her, so she just whips out her guns and starts blasting. So she's a badass. That's a great,
Mm.
yeah.
Well, and she's fiercely independent. And that was the other,
That's
and
true. She
somewhat
doesn't
stubborn.
listen. That's a little, maybe a little bit like me.
Hmm.
Doesn't really listen to what she's told to do.
At least at first.
Yeah. Problems
Yeah.
with authority.
Yeah.
I don't know the new characters really at all. And the original movies don't have many strong female characters,
Right.
period. And so I would not limit myself necessarily. I could say you were more like one of the male characters.
That's fair.
Um,
I think Leia's a
but
very strong character,
I know
personally.
she is, but that's it. You know, there's not a lot of choice other than Leia in the
That's a
first
very good
trilogy.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah. But I think Ray is what comes to mind. And you get, you're not afraid of solitude. You're extremely creative when you're by yourself. You don't need a lot of outside stimulation in order to be creative. You have issues with authority.
Definitely issues with authority.
Yeah, but you think really fast on your feet. And I'm thinking of that scene where she is going and trying to trade some of her findings in the little village on Jakku. And all of a sudden, stuff starts to happen, and she grabs BB-8 and is going her way and figures out how to just get into the Millennium Falcon and figure out how to fly it. And I think those are really great qualities.
I'm honestly just glad you didn't equate me to some Sith Lord, because that's where I thought this was going. Oh, you're Anakin Skywalker.
No. Mm-mm.
Well,
no. And Luke,
that
I
warms
mean,
my heart.
Luke is the other young person, but he's so naive.
Yeah, and then he becomes a little too serious.
Yeah,
Right.
but I mean, that's part of his charm, is that there's a freshness. You know, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Mhm.
You know?
I am a Jedi, like my
I am
father before me.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it sounds, in retrospect, now it's going to sound like I asked that question just to get compliments from both of
That
you
up.
on how creative and wonderful I am. So, yeah, we'll fix that in post. But but thank you so much for joining me and taking the time. I so appreciate having inherited this fandom from you that, you had since 1977.
Yeah. Where did it click in for you? At what point?
Oh, that's a really good question. So when people ask when I first saw it, because I was so young when you first showed it to me, I was still only just starting to form permanent memories. And so there is no point in my conscious history that Star Wars wasn't a part of my cultural fabric. So kind of always. And then I think when I saw Phantom Menace and I left the theater and realized I think that maybe that was a bad movie. But
He's starting to form opinions.
loved it so much. And I think maybe that was a moment of like, even if it's not great, I'm gonna love it because it's Star Wars. So that might have been. And then yeah, it's just multiplied every year I go a little further down the rabbit hole.
Well, there's a continuing hole to go down too.
Definitely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you're helping support the generational fandom as, with your kids. So.
Yeah, I am. Violet's into it. Sage, we can do some more work on Sage.
There's plenty of time.
There's plenty of time. Lots of
There's
time.
plenty of time.
More
Well,
Legos.
thank you both so much for more Legos, definitely. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking some time out of your weekend.
Happy to do it.
What about you, Mom? Are you happy to do it?
I'm happy to do it. Love you, darling.
I love you
I'm
too.
happy. I'm thrilled that you wanted Dad and me to be your first guests.
Of
I'm
course. This is where it all started.
honored. Yeah.
Well,
It's where it
back
all
at ya.
began.
Where it all began.
Alrighty.
Well, I love you both.
Don't get me started. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.